All right, welcome everybody. My name is Alicia McPeek, and we're excited you're joining us here to learn about the healthy living revolution. I'm so thankful for this community that is truly inspiring healthy living around the world. So what's the healthy living revolution all about? Well, people are starting to wake up and they realize they need to take responsibility for their own family's health, not leave it up to the government or the schools. It really is up to us, right? So it's so important that you know the right information that will help you take that health back. Healthy used to be so simple. And think about when you were growing up, right? It wasn't the latest superfood or that new diet craze or whatever else is out there. There's always something new. But what it really was about was just eating fresh vegetables, drinking water, playing outside, right? Now kids drink sodas and play games. And, we're just not eating and drinking and running around and using our energy throughout the day like we used to. But there really is hope. The Healthy Living Revolution is a group of people who've joined together to take healthy back because it matters. It matters more than just looking good in yoga pants, right? We want to start a health revolution. No longer do we have to stand by and be an unhealthy nation. We're taking our health back, our family's health back, our school and our community's health back. Let's start by talking about you. Or let's start talking about us, okay? Let's talk about the different things that it really does take to be healthy. So I just want to first start by talking about sleep. And I'd really like to hear, we're calling this a coffee and conversation. I'm drinking mineral water, not coffee today, but, but let's just talk candidly about what we've done in these different areas to create optimal health. And as you hear our stories, I'd really like you guys to think about what you're really doing in these areas. Are you really doing what you need to keep your body in optimal health? So let's start by talking about sleep, first of all. So here's how I feel about sleep. Most people don't realize that any tiny little light in your room will affect your sleep. You really need to be in a cool, dark room. It also matters what time you go to bed. You need to be lights out by 10 p.m. Every hour that you sleep before midnight is worth 2 hours of sleep after midnight. And your body's set up on the circadian rhythm of the earth. So between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that's where all your repair, your rejuvenation, your detoxification happens during that time and replenishing. So if you're missing even an hour of that a night, in a week, you're missing 7 hours of repair, rejuvenation, detoxification, and replenishment. So that's how I feel. I'd really like to hear you, Nathalie. I'm going to go with you first, and then just share with us what sleep means to you and how you get optimal health through sleep.
Well, I noticed throughout the years that when I go to sleep at 10, before 10, I really have a better, even though I wake up at 2 or 3, I have a better feeling in my body and my mind. So after that, it's like always a little bit chaos. The other thing, I used to wake up many times, like 6 to 7 times a night. And when I decided to black out completely my room, black, I woke up like once or twice a night. So it definitely changed my way of sleeping, blacking out.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. What about you, Dr. Kirk? What do you do to optimize your sleep?
My sleep schedule has been kind of erratic over the years just because of the studying and family things. I've really had to work on making sure that I take the time to go to bed at a decent time. And I think that's one of the challenges of parents in general. We get so busy doing what we're doing that our day gets caught up in all these different things. And we might be more wired as it comes towards bedtime than we want. So we've got to take a little extra care to say, okay, it's time for me to shut down. So I've had to become a lot more conscious about going to bed when I need to. But I also listen to my body, because sometimes if I know I don't have anything going on the next day, and I'll kind of, if I feel like staying up and I'm okay with that, then I'll stay up a little bit and kind of let my body kind of guide me. But generally, I try to do what you said. The 10 to 10:30, that guideline, if I can get in bed by 10 or 10:30, that's usually a good time for me. I've learned about different sleep cycles. Humans have a sleep cycle of 3 to 4 hours. And we normally, when we're younger, little kids need like 4 or 5 sleep cycles. That means they're sleeping, it's 3 to 4 hours with 4 sleep cycles. They're sleeping from 12 to 16 hours a day, or a night even, or sometimes in the day. So it doesn't even matter. You just watch little kids and they're just out, and they'll be out for hours. And adults, we've curtailed that so much. So I try to pay attention to making sure that I can get the sleep cycle timing in. If you interrupt a sleep cycle, you wake up feeling really groggy and unrefreshed and just feel like you just can't get yourself going for the day. So if I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock, and I count out the sleep cycles, and I say, okay, how many sleep cycles do I need to get up on time? And that's kind of how I base to make sure I don't break one of those up. So my normal day is around 10:30 bedtime, maybe sometimes a little bit later. It depends on what I got going on. And I usually wake up about 5:30 or 6 in the morning. That's kind of a normal time. So if I calculate that out, I've got about my 3 to 4 sleep cycles in there. That's about 8-9 hours, depending on 7 to 9. And sometimes I've gotten by really well with 6 hours. I don't know why my body just wakes up after 6 hours. But the other thing that I have found critical for years, and has nothing to do with the fact that I'm getting older, is taking naps. And I love taking naps. I try to squeeze a nap in, even a little 10-minute rest and close my eyes, drift off for a few minutes. That's been excellent. And I don't think we get enough naps. I go back to my kindergarten days of laying on my mat, and then the little fairy student comes around and touches me with the wand. And I just, okay, back from there, I'm like, I'm good to go for 10 minutes, and then I got to get up. So naps are critical. I don't think we get enough of them.
I definitely do the 10-minute thing from time to time. Just closing my eyes sometimes makes such a difference.
Yeah.
I was going to mention the sleep cycles too, but I've always run on the 90-minute sleep cycle. And I think that's because I think, if I remember correctly, you have enough time to get in and out of REM. But if you wake up in the middle of REM, then that's when you don't feel rested. And I know for a fact that if I wake up at like 5 and I calculate it, I've done enough 90-minute sleep cycles to be completely rested. But if I go back to sleep, oh my gosh, and wake up 30 minutes or an hour later, I'm miserable at that point. So that sleep cycle thing is truly important, more important than we need. So I always calculate 90 minutes. So if you, for example, so that's you said 6 hours, right? So 6 hours is better than 7 if you can't go to 9, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing to do. It's interesting to plan if you're going to go on a trip someplace, and let's say you're going to leave early in the morning. And say, okay, we're going to leave at whatever, 3 o'clock in the morning. I go, okay, I have to go to bed by, and you calculate backwards so you don't screw up the sleep cycle. And strangely enough, even if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go, you'll feel more rested than if you did if you woke up at 2:30.
Yeah, you will. Absolutely. And a lot of people don't know about that, but it does make a big difference. So you can go to bed at midnight and get up at 3 hours later and be rested enough to get going. It really does work. So, okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is stress. They're saying nowadays that stress is the new sitting. Okay. So we become sedentary, and that was bad. Now we're sedentary and we're stressed, and people really don't realize how bad stress is for our lives. I've been telling people for years that stress is more dangerous to your body than smoking, if you can believe that. So let's just talk about the things that we do to accommodate not having stressed out lives, because it really is the number one factor in shortening our life expectancy. So a couple of things one of my favorite things that I always talk about is adding fun into your life. And whatever activity you choose for fun has to give you back more time than it takes. So one of the things I used to do was every Thursday, like midday, I'd go see a movie because I enjoyed going to the movie, and I go to a movie an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I could get through the rest of my week. And usually Thursday was a good piece for me because I'd have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of a week, take a little break on Thursday, then I could have get through the weekend with enough energy and enough emotional stamina to be able to handle the rest of the things I had to be responsible for the rest of the week, instead of feeling resentful or worn down or, those kind of things that you feel. So incorporating fun and downtime, but downtime can be an activity as long as it gives you back more time in productivity than it takes from you. So that's one of my favorite things. What would you like to share, Nathalie? What's your favorite way to combat stress?
It's just a mindset for me now. I've been working throughout, I don't do really a lot of activities, fun activities, and I had to go into that more, but it's just a mindset that I just developed. So when I feel that I'm stressed, I just talk to myself and take some breathing. And I just like, okay, why do I see something negative or stressful? No. So you have to really I learn, and by repetition, to talk to myself down to the stress and just bring myself to a level of like, okay, life is an adventure, and it's okay. It will pass, and how can I bring this in a positive way? And so it's all about mindset, breathing, attitude, and how do you see the whole thing.
True. That is so true. All right, Dr. Kirk, your favorite way to handle and combat stress?
Well, what I try to go back and just educate myself initially about the kinds of stress. And we look at two different kinds of primary stress. So there's eustress, EUSTRESS. And eustress is the short-term beneficial kind of stress. It's 3 o'clock. I've got to get ready to go by 4. I got this to do. Okay, great. I got to knock that out and get that done. That's a beneficial stress. We handle it, we get it done, and we're over with. Distress is the other kind of stress, and regular plain old distress. And distress is the long-term kind of thing. And distress is the emotional stuff that you don't let go of during your day, that eats away at you, or the anger or the frustration, whatever. And those are the things that just keep you from being able to be your best. So I try to look at my day in a way that's, I look forward to the opportunity of the day when I wake up. I think, okay, I got 100% energy. How am I going to use it today? And then I try to maintain that 100% as I go. And if I find challenging situations that are the distresses, then those have to be managed differently than, oh, I got to crank this out and get this done. So I try to look at them in those two ways. And the other thing I really work on doing, sometimes maybe I'm not sure if it works very well, is having a youthful or playful attitude and being somewhat of a goofball. I always think of language, or when I hear conversations or comments made, maybe it goes back to my childhood in school. And I was always thinking of the tangential meaning of the same thing the teacher was saying. You know, then I'd joke around with my friend about it, and I'd say something silly and get in trouble. And so it's kind of always that attitude I've sort of maintained, is like, when someone says something, I kind of think, oh, it could mean that instead. And I just feel like, you know, being goofy and having humor in my day every day keeps things light. You know, we used to joke around, but it's true. Someday you're going to die. So what are you carrying with you? You know, like, why are you going to bring this with you? Just have fun every day and make the best of it.
You know, I think there's a lot of truth to that as well. I like both of the things that you guys do. So an attitude, Nathalie, one of the things that I started doing a long, long time ago was telling myself I have an abundance of time and I accomplish all that I set out to do, which is like kind of a mindset thing, right? I love breathing. We don't breathe enough. Being playful, oh my gosh, yes. I think that's one of the reasons I'm in love with my husband, is because he's so fun and playful. He's like a kid all the time, and I love that. And speaking of which, let's talk about the relationship piece of stress. Relationships that aren't healthy for us are very stressful for us, right? So we really do need to be protective of our relationships and the kind of relationships we have, which is hard for us to do a lot of times. So there's so many things we could talk about stress and ways to handle it. It could be bubble baths. It could be meditation. You know, even a walk could be de-stressing, being out in the sunshine. There's so many things that we can do that could help create less stress in our lives. You just really got to find the thing that really resonates with you and make sure you do it regularly. Okay, so let's talk about water next. I love this subject of water. There's so many different ways of thinking of water, but the first thing we got to think about is how much of our body is water. 75 to 80%, right? 75 to 80% of our body is water. So that means you need to consume a lot of water. And here's how I like to look at the water issue. Think of every one of your cells being full of water, and they're 70 to 80% water, right? Each one of your cells. Well, let's look at each cell as a kitchen sink. Now, let's say you fill up your kitchen sink and you leave for a week and you come back. What's that water going to be like in your kitchen sink? It's going to be yucky, right? It's going to be stagnant. It's going to be sitting there. It might even start growing some things. It's not going to be very nice. Well, let's just turn the faucet on and run it in that full sink just to displace the water that's in there. How long is it going to take for water to be poured in there before it's all replaced with fresh water? It's going to take a lot, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can't just. So what we need to do is drink enough water to push all that stagnant water out of our cells and fill it up with fresh new water for our cells to be optimized. And not having enough water can cause us fatigue, brain fog, all kinds of different issues can happen. Depression, bad moods, by not having enough water in our lives. So let's talk about the different things that water benefits you personally, or that water benefits, and how you make sure you get enough water each day. Nathalie?
I take water pretty much when I'm thirsty, and I bring a full bottle every day next to me. I always have it with me. It benefits me in the sense that I feel hydrated, and sometimes I go on a water just like a kind of water fast. I know it brings some balance in my body and helps me just balance my digestive system. And then I add some oils in it. Lemon oils, orange oils, peppermint oils, and the benefits of each. I don't want to go into it, and you have to search for it yourself. But that is like a whole plant in really quality plants in your water. So that I like that very much, and the what it brings to your body. So yeah, pretty much, when I'm thirsty, I don't over drink because I don't feel it's necessary. But when I'm thirsty, yeah.
All right. What about you, Dr. Kirk?
I go back to thinking about most of my former life was spent in nature. I was an outdoor guide for many years, and had to pay really close attention to what I was doing in the outdoors because, first of all, being in charge of the group, I've got to make sure I'm on top of things. And secondly, anybody that has any kind of dehydration issues in the backcountry, it's going to turn into a problem real fast. So we made a real conscious effort of ourselves as the leaders drinking water and then as the participants. And it was it kind of had a guideline, a few ounces every 15 minutes. It was just kind of a basic reminder, hey, stop, drink a little sip. Okay, good, keep going. And just that little reminder, a little pattern kept everybody hydrated for the most part. And then we obviously ran into some challenges where people weren't used to the exercise and needed more water at that time. But that's a basic guideline. And the overall premise that I follow or try to think about is half your body weight in ounces per day as a general guideline. And then more if you're going to be active or in some environment that's going to require, like here in Phoenix, where it's so hot and dry all the time, we have to actually increase the hydration even further. So I have a 30-ounce bottle, and I take that with me. I try to get down 4 of those every day. I start off the morning. If I'm drinking tea, then I'm good to go. If I'm drinking coffee, then I'm at a little bit of a deficit. And then I try to just monitor my foods throughout the day. And I can pay pretty good attention to how active or sedentary I am and keep my water intake based on that as well. One of the biggest problems that we have is the water that we have here in Phoenix, probably in most places, unlike nature, is very acidic. So in nature, water is naturally mineralized, and so the minerals balance out the pH in the water. And here, our water is reverse osmosis or distilled or whatever, and it's processed basically, or I shouldn't say basically, but acidically. And so it comes out where it's not very beneficial for us. So we have to make sure we're keeping enough minerals somehow in our body with the food that we eat or supplements that we take in order to help balance out that acid-alkaline ratio with the water.
True. Very true. So carrying water with you, sipping water often, kind of using at least half your body weight in ounces per day. I would always tell people 1 liter for every 30 pounds, which actually for a 120-pound woman, that's a whole gallon of water a day, which is a lot. And it's a lot more than people think. But it also, I've always heard too that if you're thirsty, you've gone past your dehydration threshold. You shouldn't feel thirsty. We can all see that we're sipping something all the time. Even while we're on here right now, we're all sipping something, but it does need to be water, right? It really can't be coffee, juice, or wine. It really needs to be pure water, mineral water, pH balanced water, all the better. And it's going to help so many things besides just the things we've mentioned. It's even going to help, I'm going to go so far as to say it'll help prevent disease by keeping your body full of clean water. Okay, so exercise, that's what's up next. So here's what I think is the most important aspect of exercise. Most people only think about how we look in yoga pants or whatever you want to say. Like it's how we
I don't look good
right?
in yoga.
You don't look good. Okay, I'm so glad you're not wearing yoga pants. But as an average guideline, 5 to 6 days a week where you're breathing heavily for 15 to 20 minutes is a good guideline just for heart health. But there's so much more to exercising than just looking good or just getting your heart pumping. The thing that I think is the most important thing about exercising is moving your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system does not have a pumping system of its own, and it's like having stagnant waste in your body. And, you know, when people hear if they have a cancer diagnosis, one of the things they look at is the lymph nodes around it. Well, they're not looking at the lymph nodes because the person has cancer. The lymph nodes are an issue, which is creating or helping the ability to create cancer in your body, because you're not moving that lymphatic system. Moving that lymphatic system is like moving the sewage system basically in your body to clear out that lymphatic system. And it can't do it unless you move your body, because it has no pumping system of its own. So for me, that is the number one most important reason to move your body every single day. I prefer to do it outside in fresh air. For me, it's also very mental, like very mentally clearing. I can think about things when I get outside in nature and move my body so much more than just going to the gym. It allows me to really work things out in my head and be with myself, because the other thing we have all the time is a lot of distractions, right? So getting out there in nature and not having a lot of distractions and just being in nature, moving my body seems to do so much for my mental health. What about you, Nathalie?
Okay, so what I do, I'm about to go to a gym, buy a gym member, because I feel that my body needs it. But for till now, what I've have is a mini trampoline, and I try to do it 5 to 15 minutes a day. And it definitely, when I don't do it, I feel it. When I do it, I'm like, not only it feels good for my body, it feels good for my mind. It makes me happy, definitely. And what I do too is to go outside and take a walk with my husband. You know, at night when I live in Phoenix, when it's not too hot, and I really like it after supper. It's really good for the digestion. What else do I do? That's pretty much what I really want to do more. I do trailing when it's not too hot outside. Makes me feel good. So it's a good feeling to do exercise. And I know when I went to the gym before, just putting out those, bringing those muscle tones and just feel vibrant and strong, you know. So I think exercise is a must in the life.
Well, and it's something like, if you haven't worked out by the age of 50, you've lost like half your muscle mass. Then it goes down significantly.
It happened to me.
Did it?
I don't like it. Like,
Well, there's so many more important. I mean, the important way. One of the things that having muscle mass does is help keep our metabolism ignited and up. So I'm gonna let Dr. Kirk talk before I say anything else. What about you?
There's a lot of things for me. I was fortunate enough when I started off my life in the early days. I've been active ever since I was a kid, and I got into a profession. I was in the outdoor profession where we were always doing something, and cycling, climbing, hiking, backpacking, paddling, skiing. We were always, just was one of those things that became part of my lifestyle. So I used to exercise outside of that, but not as much because I was always doing something active. So based on now what's happened in the last 20 years or so, I've had to take a lot more conscious effort to incorporate exercise into my weekly and daily routine. I try to get out, if I can get on my system, get my regular flow going, I try to do something about 4 or 5 times a week. And I'll ride my mountain bike around the neighborhood. There's some trails up behind my house, or I'll go to the gym and work out, try to do at least 20 minutes of cardio and then a weight routine. And if I'm riding my bike, sometimes I'll just ride or ride hard, and then sometimes I'll stop and do push-ups or something along the way. Just get off the bike, do some push-ups, jump back on, ride some more, whatever it might be. I also like to run. My knees have had some damage over the years, so running would be my preferred sport, but I have some problems with my knees. So if my knees are acting up, I don't get to run. But I used to do running circuits all the time where I'd run and stop and sit-ups, push-ups, stretch, whatever, and then keep on running. So whatever you can do, you know, something every 3 to 5 times a week minimum, and preferably if you could do something every day. The really good thing, reflecting back on the comment you made earlier about stress, is exercise is so beneficial for relieving the stress and actually helping to clear out what the stress hormones have done to our body. So the exercise and the stress go hand in hand in helping to balance one another.
So before we want to wrap up exercise, I want to add a couple of things. One is the exercise you do 45 and over is different than the exercise you should be doing and can do when you're younger, because of beginning of hormone changes. We can optimize our hormonal performance by the way we exercise, how we exercise, the kind of exercise we do as well. I'm a big proponent of heavy weightlifting to increase your HGH, which is your anti-aging human growth hormone, to keep us young. Also having more muscle keeps us younger as well, because it has a continual increase in those areas. Short bursts of exercise are actually better for us as we get older. Like, I could do a lot of things differently when I was younger that didn't affect my adrenal glands or, my hormone balances that I can't do now, and don't really want to, because I noticed that as I started getting older, I wanted to exercise differently, funny enough. And I think that's a natural response. So I do like to do things like yoga and stretching now much more too. And they're very, very beneficial to my body, where I didn't care about that when I was in my 20s. So those are our top 4 things. I think we're going to talk next about more about the nutrition side of things. And I think we'll all have some really great perspectives for that. But I want to just outline why nutrition kind of matters before we get into that. So let's look at this. So it's really about eating real foods. And we're going to go into more about what that looks like for each of us. But we want something that's not in a package or a box, right? Obviously, we talked about the other 4, which is sleep, exercise, water, stress management. And we have to arm ourselves, because we have to do all of these things for optimal health. And we have to do all these pieces, and we have to do all these things regularly. But one of the big things that we don't think about is the fact that living in this world that we're living in today is more toxic than we've ever had it before. We're bombarded with toxins of all kinds of levels and all kinds of ways, anything from drinking out of plastic to chemical bypass in the water that we're bathing in even. We're breathing them in, we're putting them on our skin. And I don't want to overwhelm people and say, you have to do all of these different things at once. You don't. You need to do components of each one of these things every day. I didn't start worrying about chemicals in my life initially. I started with my food. Honestly, where I started was with my food. Well, I'd always exercised like you, Kirk. And I think if we get our kids exercising younger, they're more likely to exercise forever. But I was always exercising. Then I started really looking at nutrition and how that affected my body, because I had been suffering from some severe depression, also severe acne, which I'm a holistic nutrition and wellness coach. And anybody, if you're looking at somebody's skin and they've got acne, stuff's going on inside of their body. But we also have issues with our food quality. Would you guys not agree that the food quality is decreasing? Right? There's so many ingredients in our food nowadays, right? The way it's grown, it's not as nutritious as it used to be. The growing practices, obviously, the more food we can grow ourselves, the better, but that's not always possible. But all of this stuff, these chemicals, the stress in our lives, they all create something called oxidative stress at a cellular level. And then oxidative stress is a precursor to something called free radicals. And free radicals are just that. They're free, and they're looking for things to attach themselves to, and they keep bumping off other molecules, and it's causing this cascade effect. And what that does is it damages your DNA. It damages your body on a cellular level. That's what the bottom line is. And it causes disease and aging. And I'm all about what we can do to optimize anti-aging and disease, right? And I think most of us we know we need to be, but we don't always know how to do that. But we can neutralize or slow down the disease and aging process by getting antioxidants in every day. So I'm going to give you guys an example. Have you ever cut an apple open and then put a lemon on part of that apple? Mm-hmm. That is an antioxidant, prevents it from aging, right? It prevents it from doing that browning, where if you leave it open to the air, it starts oxidizing. Well, see, every time you're breathing, you're creating oxidative stress too. Even exercises causes more oxidative stress, but it's not the problem. There's a stressing on your body that's actually good for you, but you need to have enough antioxidants to combat that. And honestly, that's where our fruits and vegetables come in to help slow down that aging process. But we're in a situation where in our country where, like I said before, we have mass-produced fruits and vegetables. They just don't have as much nutrition. The soil is deficient. They're transported a long ways. They're picked before they're ripe. We can get apples from Washington and blueberries from Maine, and you could live in Florida where you could get oranges right there, but you're getting them from someplace else in the country. So you guys all know the difference between picking a tomato off your back garden versus eating one picked from the grocery store, right? There's a difference. And that difference is nutrition. That taste difference that you're tasting is actually nutrition. It's like 80% of the nutritional value comes into that fruit or vegetable the last 2 weeks that it's on the vine. So if you're not picking it vine ripened or eating it vine ripened, you don't have a lot of nutritional value in there. And then 5 to 40% of it's lost during transportation, which has caused us to need to eat more fruits and vegetables than we've ever needed before. We actually need 7 to 13 servings. So I'm just going to say 10 servings is an average. And a serving is basically the size of your fist. So you don't have to answer me, but just think about how many fruits and vegetables you ate yesterday. How many did you eat? Just think about it. It's just like all these other things. We want to think about what you're doing that's really creating an impact in your health. Well, eating more fruits and vegetables matters. So one of the things, okay, I'll just tell my story. One of the things I like to do is grow my own fruits and vegetables. I've always wanted to do that. I live in Houston. It's probably just as hard in Phoenix as it is in Houston to grow things. I miss one day of watering and everything would dry up and I'd lose everything. And I'd spend a ton of money and a ton of time. And so now I use an aeroponic growing system called a tower garden. I'll show you guys a picture of it. Can you see this? I love this thing. Okay. It's an aeroponic growing system. I love it because it was created by the lead horticulturist at the land exhibit at Epcot in Disney. And it's actually like NASA technology. It has earth and sea minerals. It uses 10% of the land, 10% of the space. You plug it in and it circulates the nutrients in water. There's no soil. So there's no weeds because there's no soil, and you can really control the pest on it. You will get some from time to time, but we just pick them off if we do. We don't really have a pest problem per se. I have 5 of them, which is probably like 4 too many, but I just love growing all the different kinds of food that I can. Really, a family of 4 could have one tower garden and that would be sufficient. This just makes growing fun, and it's just creating a whole farm to table. It's part of that farm to table or local eating movement. The more you can grow yourself, the better. The other thing that I've done is add powdered produce to my body. And I just want to back up a little bit and just tell you guys my story and where I come from. I mentioned earlier that I am a holistic nutrition and wellness coach, and being such, for me, it's always been about optimizing massive amounts of nutrients from plant foods because they really do help your body prevent disease, prevent aging, protect your DNA. Your DNA is turning over all day long, zillions of times a day, and zillions, that's a technical number. And as it's reproducing every time, it's like, think of the old copy machine. Who can remember this? Some of you on here must be able to. That was on a roller and it went round and round and round. Okay, so I remember these, and every copy over time became more and more degraded. Well, that's what's happening to your DNA. Every time it's replicated, it's a little bit more damaged and it's becoming more degraded. And if you want to prevent disease and aging, you start there. When we start with antioxidants from plant foods, so what I used to do was juice a ton of vegetables. 2 quarts of vegetable juice a day, a whole pitcher of green smoothie. I literally weigh my salad and eat half a pound of salad. It was time consuming. It was expensive, but it did work. And I had my clients do it too, and it worked for them as well. But I always noticed that people had struggled with staying on task or being able to continue to do it over and over again. And for me, there was no question I was going to keep doing it because at 35, I was diagnosed with cancer and Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease. When you have one autoimmune disease, you have an 85% chance of getting a second one, 90% chance of getting a third one, and so forth and so on. So I knew, based on my background, that more mattered, and I had to do everything I could to prevent getting more autoimmune diseases, put the one I had in remission, and never, ever get cancer again. And I'll tell you, that was 15 years ago. And I did that protocol for 7 years before I found this amazing thing called Juice Plus, which is part of our healthy living movement. It's just one piece. It's just one simple change. And it made such an impact on my health that even though I thought I had done everything I could for my health, adding this powdered produce and fruits and vegetables, you can see it right back there over my shoulder, it literally has a nutrition label. It literally is whole food. And adding that immediately took my energy up, which surprised me. And about 6 months in, people started commenting on how my hair had started growing and filling out again. I'll tell you, the most impactful thing was that depression that I had suffered from my whole life. If you guys have ever had anybody in your family who has suffered from depression, it affects the whole family. And the legacy I was leaving my children wasn't one of joy and happiness. It was of a mom who was struggling. And I had done everything I could possibly do in my knowledge and power to help me with that. And I kind of got to a baseline. But one day I realized that I was feeling happy for the first time in my life. And it was so foreign to me that I actually had to ask myself what it was I was feeling. So adding this powdered produce has been the simplest, easiest thing that I've done to my nutrition to take my health to another level. And it's been the most impactful thing that I've done. And it's also been the easiest and least expensive thing that I've done. I'd love to hear from you, Nathalie, and Dr. Kirk, your journeys into wellness and health. Where did you guys come from? Nathalie, would you mind going first?
Yes. So many years ago, I was feeling overwhelmed. I was tired physically, mentally, because of a certain situation. And I couldn't focus. I needed many naps. I was super tired. And my gums were hurting. My hair was falling down. a lot from my pregnancy. And I had a daughter who was depressed and was not eating so well and tired all the time. So, and she was really young. And so, so I started to put more whole food, less processed food, actually like almost none processed food in my diet. And so I felt like much better, but I knew that it was not enough. And I found Juice Plus, and when I started to take it many weeks and many months after, it's just like my ailments just went away, and my daughter's too. So I replenished my body with more whole food. Really helped my health to another level, not only physically but mentally too. And you know, like vitamin D3, you know, I don't like to get supplement that's superficial or that's not whole food. You know, like, how do I get my vitamin D? I go sit in the sun, and that's one of the part that I enjoy in my life. It's just 15 minutes in the sun, almost all naked, you know, and my backyard, and I know it's replenishing me. You know, how do I get my other vitamins? Well, it's through whole food. You know, it's either animal or plant food. So, yeah, whole food is
Whole Foods, where is that?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Kirk, what about you? Tell us your perspective.
My food journey has been kind of long and prolonged in the sense that I grew up in the Midwest in a small town where I was surrounded by cornfields and soybeans, or basically one giant garden, but never really paid attention to my diet. And it wasn't until I was living in New Hampshire and I had several female roommates, and they were roommates, not, and my one roommate was I was in the outdoor profession. She was a real outdoorsy, and she ate really well all the time. And she went on a trip and she came back, and I had eaten some of her food while she was gone. And I think the thing that was a really turning point for me was the fact that when she came back, she opened the cupboard and she's like, "Kirk, you ate some of my food." And I said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "But you eat some of my food." And she stopped and looked at me and she said, "Kirk, there's none of your food that I would ever eat." And that was a turning point for me, is when she said, you know, I had looked in the cupboard at my stuff. And literally right after that, I went over to a local natural food cafe, and I asked the lady that ran the place if I could work there in exchange for learning. And I started learning about food, or wanting to learn about food, by volunteering at this natural food cafe, and then progressed in there, got a job there, and worked at a natural food store from that, because there was a natural food store in the same area. And I just increased my learning from that area, and eventually decided to go to naturopathic medical school, not just for the food, but the overall understanding of how the body works and what goes on with the food. So it was kind of a long road, and I still challenge myself. I love ice cream. I'm a bad, you know, I get around ice cream and I have to tell myself when to stop. And some of the carb things I have to deal with are still a problem for me. So I have to really make sure I'm eating good food and tempering my interest in the carb world. But the thing that I've noticed most is I started taking Juice Plus a few weeks, a month or so ago. And I've always had this dry patch on the top of my head, and it's been there for years. It's like a little, you know, left over from my babyhood, I guess, my seborrheic dermatitis. And strangely enough, in the past few days, it's completely cleared up. And the only time it's ever cleared up was about a couple months ago. I did a water fast where I stopped eating food altogether for some days, and it cleared up during that time as well. So obviously there's something in the Juice Plus products that are giving me some kind of benefit that helped to balance whatever was imbalanced there on my scalp, and it cleared up that part of my head. So that was a good thing. I know if your skin's doing well, then your digestion's doing well.
That's right. You can tell a big difference by the outside of your body, right?
Yeah.
So I love the Healthy Living Revolution because it is so much. And this whole concept of powdered produce, 30 different raw, vine ripened whole foods every single day, flooding your body, fruits, veggies, and berries, does make a difference. We're supposed to eat 7 to 13. When was the last time you did that? This way you can do it every day, and that's why it makes an impact. But I also love the Healthy Living Revolution for so much more. Obviously we have the Tower Garden, which we also shared with you. We have a Jumpstart program called Shred 10. We also have free resources that are phenomenal. Every season we come out with a brand new cookbook of seasonal healthy and easy recipes. We also have twice a month, we have webinars that are on those trending and confusing health topics to help you continue to learn. It's continued education. We also have the home fitness series. So it doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to even go get a gym membership if you don't want to. Jump on our home fitness series. There's something for everybody. So it doesn't matter where you want to start on your nutritional journey. Pick something and start somewhere. If the person who invited you to this conversation, if you're interested in anything that we have to share, let us know and we'll make sure you get those free resources or more information about anything that we've talked about here today. I just want to thank you, Nathalie and Kirk. You guys both have a ton of great background and information to share about your health journey. And it was very beneficial even for me to hear great stories. And thank you again for joining us, everybody. And goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.